welcome to the May 21st, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. The Planning Commission is made up of 7 volunteer residents appointed by the City Council. On some items, we have final decision-making authority, subject to an appeal to City Council, and other items we make recommendations to Council. For each item, there will be a staff report, a chance for the applicant to speak, and then time for public testimony. We start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you're able, please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So item 1, I understand we have a request for a continuance.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Do you want to go over the WebEx?
Sure. Madam Chair, just quickly on that, if I can advance it. There we go. So this is our 5th remote meeting since the pandemic started at the Planning Commission. We have 4 people physically present tonight, very well spaced, but everybody else is joining remotely. So planning commissioners, other staff, applicants, members of the public. If you're watching live and would like to testify, you can call the number on the screen, 952-563-8926, or email planning@bloomingtonmn.gov at any time, and you'll receive instructions on how to participate. And we'll have that number rolling throughout the meeting as well. And all votes do need to be conducted via roll call tonight. That's all I had, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So now moving on to item 1, I understand we have a continuance request. Is that correct?
That's correct. Madam Chair, the applicant is requesting to continue the item indefinitely, so it will be renoticed before it would come back before the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to continue item 1 indefinitely? Commissioner Roman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to continue item PL 2020-8 indefinitely.
Do I have a second?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Solberg gets a second.
Moved by Commissioner Roman, second by Commissioner Solberg. All those in favor say aye. Commissioner Solberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Goldsman?
Aye.
Commissioner Corman?
Aye.
Commissioner Roman?
Aye.
Commissioner Albrecht?
Aye.
And that is an aye from me. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to item 2. Can we have the staff report, please?
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. Nick Johnson in planning, city planner. Hopefully I have shared my screen and you guys can see that. Is that all right?
No.
Not yet.
No? Hold on. Let's try again.
Not yet. There it is.
Okay, how's that?
Yes.
Great, thank you. The application before you this evening is a preliminary and final development plans. It's been submitted by Oppidan Development and Bank of America. So 6111 West 98th Street. This is the Baker Square site. So it's been vacant since last year. So currently a restaurant. Just a note about this area. So this site is part of the Oxborough Center shopping center. So there's a number of different stores and restaurants. Duluth Trading is just to the west of this site, just for reference. 98th Street, CASA 1, it is a Hennepin County roadway, Old Shakopee. So just to note that as well, there is some interaction with the county on this item. And then Lyndale to the west. Just to note that this area is within the 98th Street Station area planning area. So this area was proactively rezoned to the B4 zoning district at the end of 2019, I believe, Glenn. Does that sound right? Yeah, close enough. So the B4 zoning district just has some different standards than the B2. It really encourages buildings up near the street and has some other design standards, so we'll talk about some of that tonight. But just as a note about the area, this parcel is in the 98th Street Station area. So in terms of what's proposed, Bank of America is proposing to build a one-story freestanding bank at the Baker Square site. So that in yellow is the approximate location for the bank. You can see it's located up towards 98th Street. So again, in keeping with that B4 zoning district standard. Here's some site photos just to orient you. This is that's the existing restaurant, which would be demoed. So that's just a view from 98th Street that we pulled. And then this is the rear of the restaurant building. Just a couple notes about Oxborough Center. The majority of the buildings are constructed of brick, and that does come up later with respect to one design standard we have in code is that non-commercial or non-residential buildings within a planned development should be related in design and materials. So just to take note of the materials of the surrounding Oxborough Center. One thing that is unique to this parcel in terms of the review that applies to the redevelopment of this site is that the site is subject to cross parking and access easements to the benefit of this parcel, but also more so the adjoining parcel to the west, as well as the Oxborough Center to the south. So along the eastern portion of the site, if you can see my mouse, this is actually the eastern extent of the property. So the driveway that a lot of traffic that goes into the center is actually fully encapsulated within this parcel, shown in that yellow area. The green area is just a general parking easement to the benefit of the shopping center. And the other portions of the yellow are access and parking easements that travel throughout the site to the benefit of Duluth Trading and Oxborough Center. So when you think about the developable portion of this lot, it's not the full extent of the site. It's really constrained to the area of where the existing restaurant is now. And so a big reason for what you see in terms of some of the deviations requested as well as the site plan that's been presented, a lot of those components are informed by these access easements. And so this is a private agreement amongst property owners. Typically in a planned development like this, you'll have, one property owner ideally, so that they can make changes without having to consult with other parties. But in this case, there are multiple property owners. And so the site plan before you has been negotiated with the surrounding property owners in relation to its impacts on those cross parking and access easements. So these easements take up 67% of the total site area. Getting to the site plan itself, so again, the building is code compliant from a setback standpoint. Up at the street, it's set back 21 feet from the northern boundary. So that's a good thing with respect to the B4 zoning district. On the west side of the structure is the drive-through, and there is a canopy that is proposed as part of that. Per our city code, the drive-through has to be screened in this zoning district. So at this time, what the applicant is proposing to do is extend. There are some decorative brick walls at the corners of the site. They would extend that decorative brick wall from the northwest corner eastward in order to screen the proposed drive-through with this U-shaped turn back to the south. So that would provide that required screening. One large public benefit associated with this site plan is that currently there is a driveway located pretty close to the intersection of the driveway and West 98th Street. So as proposed, this would move that driveway further to the south, which is a much better situation from a queuing standpoint if someone is attempting to turn into this site while someone is taking that immediate right into the Baker Square site. It can cause problems. So moving that site access further to the south is a public benefit. There are 4 deviations associated with this application. I want to touch on those. The first 2 really relate back to that previous slide about the cross parking and access easements. The first one is floor area ratio. In the B4 district, the minimum floor area ratio is 0.2. So for the case of this site, that would mean that the minimum building size at this property would have to be over 10,000 square feet in size. But given the pad that I showed you earlier, that would mean that at minimum it would be required to be a 3-story building. So in terms of 3 stories of use, 10,000 square feet of use, It would be challenging to fit that in there on this site with the limited parking that the site has in terms of what has to also be shared with the adjoining owners. So they're proposing to reduce that FAR down to 0.08. The building size proposed is a little over 4,000 square feet in size. The restaurant was 4,700 square feet, so it is a modest reduction, but still meeting that minimum building size in the B4 zoning district. Staff is supportive of that deviation for those cross-access easements, as noted before, 67% of the site taken up with that. The second deviation relates to street enclosure, and these are standards that apply to the B4 district. And what that means is that the building should take up 50% of the lineal width of the site. Now, again, given the fact that the driveway for the center takes up a good portion of the site, as well as this shared drive aisle with the Duluth Trading building, reducing that down to 37%, given that portions of the site are unusable, makes sense from our perspective. So we are supportive of that deviation on the basis of those easements as well. The other two deviations are not informed by those easements, but just other characteristics of the site. Bank of America is proposing to reduce the stacking spaces from the minimum requirement of 6 down to 4. We have done deviations for drive-through stacking for other banks in town. The reason being is that the minimum of 6 stacking spaces is more for drive-through coffee shops, restaurants, those types of situations where you have longer queuing times. Staff, in our experience, don't see very long queues at bank ATMs. And this is an ATM-only drive-through. It's not for the tube service or other types of service. So just to note that. So we are supportive of that deviation on that basis of what the use actually is. And then finally, they are requesting a reduced setback from 20 feet down to 10 feet for their proposed ground sign in front of the site, given that the building is at a 21-foot setback, which is a positive outcome in terms of the B4 zoning district and bringing the building to the street. That doesn't really leave a lot of room for a sign to be able to meet a 20-foot setback in that area. So as long as the sign stays out of the easement, which it currently is at a 10-foot setback, that reduced setback makes sense in this instance from our perspective. So those are the deviations being requested with the application. Hopefully I touched on everything with the site plan. Building elevation. So if you'll recall, this application was actually scheduled for a hearing in February. The reason that it was continued multiple times is that the developer was working with Bank of America on revising the exterior materials of the bank. And so what they originally submitted was mostly metal bank, or mostly metal exterior material. What they've come back with is a brick, glass, and a small portion of metal panels. So again, just two things to be aware of here. In the B4 district, they have to meet a transparency requirement for windows along their primary street. And so that would be their northern building elevation facing West 98th Street. They have to have 50% windows along that elevation, along the ground level portion, and they are now meeting that. Their previous exterior elevations did not meet that requirement. And the second component of the design standards is that the building match or be complementary of the surrounding buildings within the plan development. So again, hearkening back to those images of the Oxborough Center, this is a brick bank, red and tan in color. It very much matches and is in keeping with the materials and design of the surrounding center. So I think it'll fit in quite nicely. And they have increased the amount of glass, not just on the northern elevation, but on other elevations as well. So that's a positive thing. So that's the north and south elevation. Now just showing you the west elevation with the drive-through and the canopy. And then the east elevation is actually the front door of the bank. And you can see that that is almost the entire extent of that elevation is glass with metal panel above the front entry. Get into the floor plan itself. This is one of the a newer design, more typical of banks that are constructed today. It's actually a cafe style bank, so they don't have a typical counter like you see in historically what you see with banks. So I think that the way that this operates, and maybe Ian Hawker, the developer, can provide more info if requested, but I think that people would come into this lounge type atmosphere cafe and be served by bankers as they wait within the cafe. There is a 24-hour ATM here in the southeast corner near the front door. The northern portion of the building is lined with offices and a break room. And then there's other components of the bank, restrooms, nursing room, workspaces that you'd typically see in a bank. Getting the landscape plan, only 2 comments of note here. They need to add 4 trees to their landscape plan, and they need to add some additional foundation plantings on the northern elevation in order to be compliant with our supplemental landscaping policy. So some pretty straightforward changes, should be able to accommodate those. We did receive 1 email from Hennepin County. Again, hopefully you saw my email earlier tonight. I apologize that that was not included in the packet. It was back from February, so I forgot about it. And nothing real jarring here in the Hennepin County email. Jason Godfrey, their transportation planner, just notes that any work within the right-of-way will require a county right-of-way permit. There are some utility issues specific to this site that may require some additional work in the right-of-way that they may need to resolve. And then Hennepin County did make a design recommendation request that the drive-through be moved further away from 98th Street with that pedestrian environment there. And all things being equal, if this site was not encumbered with these easements, that would be an easier thing to accommodate. But the area that Bank of America and Oppidan have to work with is much smaller as a result of those easements. So all things being equal, I think that they're providing a good development here, and the drive-through functions while still bringing the building all the way up to the street, so that's a positive. Staff is recommending approval. I do have a motion before you. Happy to take any questions. And I know the applicant is available too.
Any questions for staff? Commissioner Roman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Johnson, on the 98th Street, so on the north frontage of the property, I'm curious about if you look at the, yeah, that's great. I know there was the picture that showed us the existing easements. I know you said some of those have been renegotiated. My question is, the Duluth Trading Building fronts up to the sidewalk. Was there conversation about whether or not this building should front to the sidewalk? I notice it is set back still, just it's obviously less than the Baker Square was, but it's not up to the sidewalk. And I was wondering what conversation might have happened there.
Yeah, Madam Chair, good question, Commissioner Roman. We didn't specifically press them on that. I do know that that Bank of America does want to accommodate a ground sign in that area, so I'm guessing that informed part of the decision of the setback. We didn't, as I said, we didn't push them to do it. They are complying with the B4 zoning district front setback requirement. So perhaps Ian Hawker with Oppidan has more information about that, but I'm assuming it probably has to do with wanting to accommodate a ground sign in that area.
Okay, and so then visually it's probably not dissimilar to the, I don't know if that's the Fairview building across the street or what that is over there.
Yeah, I'd say that's an equivalent setback. That's a good example.
Thank you.
Commissioner Goldsman.
Thanks, Madam Chair. One question I have for you, Mr. Johnson, is around the drive-through. Looking at the proximity to the entranceways of the Duluth Trading and parking, has there been any discussion on crosswalks or types of signage to ensure that we have people that are walking to their cars from, the other locations and the traffic going through that drive-through?
Yeah, Commissioner Goldsman, we did discuss that a little bit with the applicant. I'd be curious what they have to share about that, but what I can provide is that I don't remember the exact number, but the number of employees who work at the facility at any given time is not a substantial number. And so what they communicated to us is that they fully anticipate that this front field parking just south of the building is going to be able to accommodate most of the parking that they need the majority of the time. And so certainly some customers would park along this western north-south parking row, but they don't anticipate it to be as frequent as the other parking to the south. And so I think that they have to provide that parking as a result of those easements with Duluth Trading. And so I think what the design you're seeing here is to mirror and match what they provided to them before, what the existing condition is, in order to get the adjoining property owner to sign off on the change of those easements, because the adjoining property owner ultimately will have to sign off on the vacation of this portion of the easement, if you see where my cursor is. So I think they wanted to keep the design as matched as best they could to that in order to get the adjacent landowner buy-in.
If I may follow up on another question.
Yes, Commissioner Goldsman.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So just to clarify, the entrance of the drive-through would be going, yep, right where your cursor is. So I guess my question is really around the shoppers at Duluth Trading, if they're coming in and out of the store, and then you have patrons of the bank using that drive-through. I guess a concern that I have, or just a question, is how would that flow work with walking traffic as well as people trying to use the drive-through?
Yeah, it's a fair question. Ideally, people are driving slow, number one, in a parking lot. But if people are driving on the east side of that drive aisle and patronizing a business in the Duluth Trading Company, you're correct that they will have to cross a lane of traffic that vehicles might be driving in to go on that drive aisle. You're not incorrect about that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, does the applicant wish to speak on this item?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry, apologize. Yeah, I just would like to say this is Ian Hawker with Oppidan. So I have two other gentlemen that are here with us tonight. Brandon Garnett with Nelson Architects. He is the project manager on behalf of Bank of America. So any specific questions you might have in relation to the elevations or things of that nature, they can answer. And then also our civil engineer, who was integral in designing the site plan, Ben Johnson with Kimley Horn. And we're excited about this project overall. And I think we took the intent of the B4 zoning to enhance this site in order to make it more walkable for this particular trade area. And we worked with staff on this design through a handful of iterations to get to this point. And so we're very pleased with it, and we're excited about it. So if there's anything that you guys have tonight beyond what you've already asked that you'd like for us to share with you, we're happy to answer those questions.
Any questions for the applicant? I guess just out of curiosity, looking at the design of the building, it looks like pretty much all of the windows are on the, what would that be, west side? And especially with the drive aisle, there didn't appear to be any windows. Just curious about your reasoning for that.
Brandon, if you're able to speak, I'd like for you to talk on that just because you designed it.
Sorry, there are no windows on the west side. All the windows are on the east.
Yes. Commissioners, can you hear me? This is Brandon Garnett with Nelson Architecture.
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So, yes, with the Bank of America design, we, of course, our entrance is along the east elevation. And so with that entrance glass, that's facing our lobby, our central zone, we have a fair amount of glass there. And then we try to place as much glass as we can near our offices. Along what would be our west elevation along the drive-through lanes, the reason why we don't place any glass back there is because usually with the bank's locations, we try to plant all of our secure spaces along the back of house. So back there we have our safes, our networking rooms, our servers, as well as our sprinkler riser rooms and our wellness room. So all those are the private spaces, our secure spaces that we need to land. In the upper left-hand corner, that's the workroom, where the safes are sitting, and then the electrical and the networking room are right below that. So that's typically why we try to not put any glazing along those facades. And this is very complementary of most of the other banks that we design. We have a lot of glazing up near the front, and then we try to reduce the glazing at the rear for just security concerns. Protective Services is a branch of the bank that is very concerned with those areas. So we usually try to plant those at the rear of the building and near the drive-throughs. And then just one additional comment. This is actually brand new for the bank, this design iteration. So this is one of the first ones in regards to this look and feel, exteriorly and interiorly as well, with a cafe style. It's actually the first one that I'm designing for them of this iteration. So it would be one of the newer models for the nation. So just wanted to add that comment.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, are there any members of the public that indicated they wanted to speak on this item?
Madam Chair, we've not received any communication from the public on this item in terms of involvement here at the public hearing.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing? Commissioner Solberg,
Madam Chair, motion to close public hearing.
Commissioner Goldsman,
Second.
moved by Commissioner Solberg, second by Commissioner Goldsman. All those in favor say aye. Commissioner Solberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldsman,
Aye.
Commissioner Corman,
Aye.
Commissioner Roman,
Aye.
Commissioner Albrecht,
Aye.
and that is an aye from me. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to discussion. Commissioner Albrecht.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is a great improvement. I did read and was definitely paying attention to the improvements that were made from the original plans that we saw back in February. I really appreciate moving that entrance into the parking lot south from where Baker Square had it. I think that is really great in terms of pedestrian safety, and I think I'm in full support of the project.
Commissioner Roman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Commissioner Albrecht's comments. I think an improvement. I think the applicant has done a nice job of trying to design something that is in line with the rezoned area. My only general observation is it would have been nice if it was closer to the sidewalk, but I don't think that's a deal breaker, and it does comply with the standards. So I am supportive.
Commissioner Solberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm supportive of the application as well, and I think the deviations that have been requested are certainly reasonable as we talk about the amount of street enclosure, the floor area ratio, and the stacking for vehicles. It's been my experience in the same manner that drive-thrus typically don't have large stacking for banks. And then again, the sign setback from 20 feet to 10 feet, it's a much improved site over what was existing there with the Baker Square. So again, I can support this application.
Thank you. Commissioner Roman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I forgot the last part of my comment. And this is not at all to the credit or discredit for the applicant. But, I think going forward, the way this property was allowed to have been, if you will, hacked up with easements, I think is also a limiting factor. And so I just would think that for us as a commission to pay attention to those things when they do come forward. Again, this happened well before us. And we can see what it's led to for the challenge that this applicant has had trying to redevelop the property.
Commissioner Goldsman. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Oh, I was on mute talking to myself.
There we go.
Sorry about that. If everyone is in agreement, I'd like to make a motion.
Please go ahead.
All right. In case PL 2020-14, having been able to make the required findings, I move to approve a major revision to preliminary development plans and final development plans for a new one-story freestanding bank at 611 West 98th Street, subject to conditions and code requirements attached to the staff report.
Commissioner Corman.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Goldsman, second by Commissioner Corman. All those in favor say aye. Commissioner Solberg.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldsman.
Aye.
Commissioner Corman,
Aye.
Commissioner Roman,
Aye.
Commissioner Albrecht,
Aye.
and that is an aye from me. That motion passes 6-0. This will move on to the June 1st City Council meeting. The next item is just approval of Planning Commission meeting minutes. The first meeting is April 9th, 2020. All commissioners were present for that meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Commissioner Roman?
So moved.
Commissioner Solberg?
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Roman, second by Commissioner Solberg. All those in favor say aye. Commissioner Solberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Goldsman?
Aye.
Commissioner Corman?
Aye.
Commissioner Roman?
Aye.
Commissioner Albrecht?
Aye.
And that is an aye from me. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to the April 23rd Planning Commission meeting minutes. All commissioners were present for that meeting. Commissioner Albrecht?
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Sorry about that. The April 23rd minutes.
All right. Do I have a
Commissioner
second?
Roman, second.
Moved by Commissioner Albrecht, second by Commissioner Roman. All those in favor say aye. Commissioner Solberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Goldsman?
Aye.
Commissioner Corman?
Aye.
Commissioner Roman?
Aye.
Commissioner Albrecht?
Aye.
That is an aye from me. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to the May 7th Planning Commission meeting. I believe Commissioner Corman was the only one absent for that. Do I have a motion to approve the May 7th Planning Committee minutes? Commissioner Albrecht?
I move to approve the May 7th Planning Commission minutes.
Commissioner Goldsman?
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Albrecht, second by Commissioner Goldsman. All those in favor say aye. Commissioner Solberg?
Aye.
Commissioner Goldsman?
Aye.
Commissioner Roman?
Aye.
Commissioner Albrecht?
Aye.
That is an aye from me. Motion passes 5-0. That will conclude the May 21st, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. The next meeting will be on June 11th, 2020.